Today we're here together, and I really thank you. We all thank you greatly for being here to remember and celebrate, critique and analyze. After the mass killing of 1 million to 1.5 million Armenians by the Ottoman government in 1915, and during which time another 1 million to 1.5 million Greeks and Pontic Greeks and Assyrian Christians were also killed. After the destruction of about 2,500 Armenian churches and monasteries, about 1,990 schools, the destruction of the movable and immovable property and material culture and commercial institutions of more than 2 million Armenians living in Turkey then. After that, Armenian literature survives. Armenians are small in numbers, relatively speaking, but deep in history and culture. I say small in numbers, maybe 8 to 9 million in the world today. But their literature, both in Armenian and in various languages of Armenian diasporan life, is a vital force, an inventive, imaginary, a cultural project of enduring value. After the ruin, the texts remain. The Armenian literary tradition is about 2,000 years old, 1,700 years old in its own language. Genocide didn't extinguish this glue force. The words and texts, the song of rhythmic language, music, the speech, tongue, voice, syntax, the fierce blade of truth-making, the alembic of insight, the kinetics of literary knowledge. That stuff was not extinguished. A whole generation of Armenian writers and intellectuals were cut down by the Turkish government in 1915 in a systematic process of arrest, deportation, imprisonment, and murder. And yet, most of their work survives. The books weren't killed. Although a whole generation of writers were silenced, just as that generation was coming into its maturity, and that's a loss that's hard to calculate. And it reminds us, perhaps, of why Raphael Lemkin, who developed the concept of genocide as an international crime, placed such importance on the destruction of culture as a component of genocide. Tonight we have an extraordinary group of minds: Eric Bogosian, Nancy Krikorian, Maureen Freely, Ronald Suni, Ragip Sarakalu, Robert J. Lifton. You have their bios on the program, so I don't need to read them. But we have a kind of jazz sextet here, so you're going to witness the cues in process as we do our thing. And as I say, we will be talking about the issues surrounding and emanating from the 1915 killing of the Armenian intellectuals. I plan to ask our panelists some questions, and we are also going to read some segments. So let me start with a segment from the memoir by, and I need to go to my computer here. That's an image, but let me go to Balakian. Yes, he's a relative. He's our great uncle, my grandmother's uncle, my grandfather's cousin. He wrote a memoir, Armenian Golgotha. He was arrested on the night of April 24, and he survived. His memoir tells an extraordinary story of his survival. This is a short excerpt remembering the night of the arrests. On the night of Saturday, April 24, 1915, the Armenians of the capital city, exhausted from the Easter celebrations that had come to an end a few days earlier, were snoring in a calm sleep. Meanwhile, on the heights of Stambul near Hagia Sophia, a highly secret activity was taking place in the palatial central police station. Groups of Armenians had just been arrested in the suburbs and neighborhoods of the capital. Blood-colored military buses were now transporting them to the central prison. Weeks earlier, Bedri, chief of police in Constantinople, had sent official sealed orders to all the guardhouses with the instructions that they not be opened until the designated day and that they be carried out with precision. The orders were warrants to arrest the Armenians whose names were on the blacklist, a list compiled with the help of Armenian traitors. My uncle was never weak or soft on Armenians. He critiqued them as much as possible. Armenian traitors, particularly Arten Megerditsyan, who worked with the neighborhood Ittihad clubs. Condemned to death were Armenians who were prominent and active in either revolutionary or nonpartisan Armenian organizations and who were deemed liable to incite revolution or resistance. On this Saturday night, I, along with 8 other friends from Scutari, was transported by a small steamboat from the quay of the huge armory of Selimiye to Sirkija. The night smelled of death, the sea was rough, and our hearts were full of terror. We were prisoners under strict police guard, not allowed to speak to each other, and we had no idea where we were going. We arrived at the central prison, and here behind gigantic walls and large bolted gates, they put us in a wooden pavilion in the courtyard, which was said by some to have once served as a school. We sat there quiet and somber on the bare wooden floor under the faint light of a flickering lantern, too stunned and confused to make sense of what was happening.